Hello everyone and welcome to Fiction Friday. Today we have episode 19 of The Squire. I hope you enjoy it.
Rain tried her best not to goggle at the display of wealth and craftsmanship as the royal guards led them to the throne room. A hall wide enough to accommodate 6 horses side by side led to a set of doors carved with a scene of angels and monsters battling. Stained glass windows lined the walls above lifelike carved statues of all the kings and queens of Celestia since its founding. Had the sun still shone, she imagined the lights and colors would take her breath away. As it was, she felt like a provincial making her first visit to the capital. Beside her, Cole stared with undisguised pleasure at the rich decorations. It must be nice sometimes to enjoy the beautiful things with open awe instead of having to disguise your admiration for fear of being thought unfamiliar with such wonders. For the first time in her life, Rain envied someone of common blood. They approached the doors, and Rain tried to look bored by the whole event. It took all her training and control to manage it. Cole looked at her and frowned. "Don't tell me this isn't the most wondrous place you've ever seen." It seemed she couldn't fool him. "It's very nice." He looked away, shaking his head and muttering about noble phonies. He had a point. It was ridiculous to pretend the hall didn't impress her. Yet she couldn't allow herself to show it since it would put her in a weak position when they entered the royal court. The doors glowed when they approached and swung open on their own. She smiled, despite her best efforts. That was a neat trick. Inside, the royal court held perhaps 20 nobles standing around small tables covered with food and glasses of wine and talking. Everyone fell silent and turned their way. No one seemed impressed as they all returned to their conversations after a few seconds. Some things remained the same no matter the kingdom. At the end of the room, a man sat in one of 2 chairs on a raised platform. A simple gold circlet rested on his brow, and a purple, fur-trimmed robe surrounded him. He wore a glum expression that said he'd rather be almost anywhere else at that moment. He had to be the king. But where was the queen? A hush fell over the court as the most beautiful, elegant woman Rain had ever seen entered from another door at the back of the room. The queen had long blonde hair that flowed with a breeze that didn't exist. Bright gold eyes glittered as she smiled and came toward Rain. She wore a gown of white satin and seemed to glow with an inner light. When the queen reached them, she took Rain's hands. "Welcome to Celestia, my dear. Please accept my most sincere condolences on the loss of your parents." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Rain was an attractive woman. Enough people had told her so. But compared to the queen, she felt like a little girl playing at being a princess. "No need to be so formal. I'm Talia." The queen turned to Lieutenant Miles. "Thank you, Lieutenant, for bringing our guests here safe and sound." Miles placed a hand over his heart. "Our pleasure, Majesty." Miles led his men back out of the court and the door closed behind them. Queen Talia turned her attention to Cole and a twinge of jealousy went through Rain. She wanted the queen's attention all to herself. She dismissed the childish idea the moment she had it. Cole wore a funny little frown and she noticed him fiddling with his ring. "You must be the Squire. It's amazing that you got the princess here in one piece. The king, my husband, and our generals will wish to speak with you about the beastmen's movements." "I am at your disposal, of course," Cole bowed. "Come, let me introduce you two to my husband." Queen Talia led them to the thrones, turned and sat beside her husband. "Princess Rain, Squire Cole, this is my husband Jared." Cole bowed again, but Rain only nodded, one monarch to another. A little smile curled at the corner of Jared's lip. "Welcome, Princess. Squire, please be at ease. No harm will come to you here." Cole straightened and smiled. "Thank you, Your Majesty. It seems a long time since I felt safe." Rain glanced at him. It seemed strange that he would warm to the king and not the beautiful queen. Before she had time to consider his odd behavior, the king continued. "You're not the first Corinthians to grace our court this week." He gestured, and one of the nobles separated from the group and approached. Rain's heart skipped a beat. It couldn't be. "Callion? How?" Callion smiled his beautiful smile. "My dear Rain, it's been a harrowing journey dodging beastmen and running from one side of the kingdom to the other. Only thoughts of you kept me going." Callion held out his arms and Rain leapt into them. It felt so good, the familiar warmth. Callion kissed her cheek. She sighed and stepped back. "I thought for certain you'd fallen in the initial attack. When we got separated..." "I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you, Princess. The chaos of battle kept us apart." Callion glanced at Cole as though noticing him for the first time. The scowl Cole wore didn't surprise Rain. They'd never gotten along. "It seems my fellow Squire kept you safe," Callion said. "I managed, despite the harrowing circumstances." "How did you get here ahead of us, Callion?" Cole asked. Rain frowned at Cole's tone. Even if he didn't like Callion, Cole should speak to a noble of the realm with more respect. She studied his frown, realizing if Cole initially disliked her, he loathed Callion. "No doubt superior skill." A sneer curled Cole's lip, as ugly an expression as she'd seen on his face. "No doubt." He turned his attention to her and his expression softened. "You realize, aside from your name, every word he's spoken has been a lie." Before Rain could speak, Callion said, "How dare you insult me? What's a peasant like you even doing here amongst your betters? Surely they can find a hovel for you to squat in, make you feel at home." A soft chuckle went around the room. If the insult bothered him, Cole gave no sign. His gaze locked on her. Rain looked away, then back. "It might be best if you gave us some time alone." His expression hardened, and she knew whatever respect she'd earned from him, that one sentence had wiped it away. He bowed to her, somehow making the gesture an insult. "As you command, Your Majesty." She flinched from the contempt in his voice. He seemed to hate her more now than when they first left the castle. Cole turned to the king and queen, bowed and walked out one of the side doors. "Now that pest is out of the way, we can enjoy this fine company. It must have been such a trial for you, Princess, having to spend so much time with such a crude fellow," Callion said. Her gaze turned away from the door. She felt a loss she couldn't explain. "Yes, a trial." Cole stalked through the beautiful halls lit by floating light globes without noticing a thing. He'd risked his life more than once to get her here alive, and the moment she was safe, she cast him aside like so much trash. He sighed and shook his head. What had he expected? She was a noble. The idea of gratitude was foreign to them. No doubt she figured he had done his duty as her servant and nothing more. He passed a carved door and pushed it open. He needed some air. The door opened out into a garden with a little pond fed by a trickle of a stream. Ivy-covered arches shaded a manicured walkway. He strolled along, enjoying the smell of blossoming roses, and let his stress melt away. He'd gotten her here, now she was Celestia's problem. At the end of the path, he came to a stone bench that offered a view of the moonlit city. His eyes widened at the sight. The garden had to be at least 2 stories up. He sat down and closed his eyes. Such a beautiful place. It was a pity he'd never be accepted here any more than at Castle Finegold. "May I join you?" His eyes popped open and he reached for his sword before he realized who spoke. The queen smiled at his reaction. He moved his hand away from his sword but stayed alert. An aura surrounded her whole body. It reminded him of the one around the hidden sword at the tournament. Combine that with the fact that no woman could look as beautiful as her, and he knew something about her was a lie. Cole slid over and the queen sat beside him. "Forgive my reaction, Majesty. I guess I'm still a little jumpy." "It's fine, and please call me Talia." Cole raised an eyebrow. What sort of queen wanted to be called by her given name? "Majesty?" "Is it so strange? I'm a person like any other. Away from court, I like to be called by my given name. It's nice to be a little less formal now and then." "As you wish, Talia. I'm confident when I say you are certainly not like any woman I've ever met." She gave him a piercing look. "Why do you shy away from me?" "I don't know what it is, but your aura screams that something about you is a lie. I mean no offense." "I don't understand. What is it you see and how do you see it?" Cole held up his hand and wiggled the ring on his finger. Some crazy old truth seer gave me this along with a line about me being a champion of truth, whatever that means. All I know is I can tell when someone lies to me, and a glow surrounds hidden things. It's a handy trick, but also a nuisance. You wouldn't believe how often people lie without even thinking about it. I'm not sure what you're hiding, Majesty, and it's none of my business, but it's hard to trust someone who's deceiving you. Much to his surprise, the Queen clapped her hands like a delighted child and laughed. You're the first to notice. To think that a simple squire should detect it when all the lightcasters and nobles of the realm see nothing. May I examine your ring? Cole held out his hand. It won't come off. She took his hand in hers, her fingers cool and dry against his. Of course not. A ring of truth won't come off until the chosen bearer is dead. I haven't seen one of these in ages. A faint white glow appeared around her fingers and the ring. She gazed at it, lost in thought. Majesty, may I have my hand back? She laughed again and released him. Talia, remember? Cole nodded and rubbed his hand where she'd touched it, hoping she'd hold it again sometime. Where the hell did that come from? She was a queen, and married as well. I'll remember. Good. Now let me tell you a secret so you'll understand the aura and maybe you can relax with me. How much do you know about Celestia and the Lake Kingdoms? A little. I know more about Corinthia than any of the others. There have been disagreements among the kingdoms over the years, but never any wars. There's a legend about a monster-haunted island in the center of the lake. She smiled like a teacher with a student that surprised her. Well, what you don't know, what no one outside the royal family of Celestia knows, is that to keep the bloodline strong, every 3 generations an angel is chosen to marry the heir to the throne of Celestia. The chosen angel must take a physical form so he or she can have a child with the human ruler. So I'm this generation's mate. This, she gestured at her flawless body, is a lie. Angels are beings of pure light. To perform my duties, I had to take a physical form. I see. Either the queen was a raving lunatic or she just shared one of the deepest secrets of the realm with a common squire. She seemed sad, and the ring vouched for her honesty. I'm sorry. Why? Why indeed? He wasn't sure himself. I can't imagine being forced to marry a stranger, much less someone not even of my kind. It would be like someone telling me to marry a female Saberfang. It doesn't seem right. I saw you were special. The moment I saw you in court, you stood out. Talia rested her head on his shoulder. Cole hesitated a moment, then put his arm around her. I love this spot at night. Looking out over the city, the stars shining overhead. It reminds me of home. Home? Humans call it heaven, the realm of angels. The light is so thick there, it's like you're swimming in it. In this realm, everything feels thin. Your home sounds nice. Will you be able to return when your work is done here? Oh yes, thoughts of returning home keep me sane. Enough about me. Tell me about your home. Talia lifted her head off his shoulder and looked at him, her golden eyes shining in the moonlight. Before he could speak, a scream echoed through the night. He knew that voice. It was Rain.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Fiction Friday. If you liked what you heard, you can find more of my fiction on my website, jamesewisher.com. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with anyone else you think might enjoy the show. Until next week, goodbye.